Hello, you are welcome once again to the Are We There Yet podcast studio. By the way, thank you so much for all your lovely comments on the episode so far. So glad you're enjoying them. And by the way, you can like and subscribe and share and continue to do all that good stuff that you are doing, because that really helps us out as well. Today, we've got a very special episode of Are We There Yet, brought to you by the Matter Private Network. And I am in conversation with consultant geriatrician Dr. Shane O'Hanlon from the Matter Private. And we talk about one of my favourite topics right now, which is ageing. We discuss reducing your risk of dementia. We talk about how introducing small incremental pieces of exercise into your daily life can add years onto your life. We talk about new breakthrough technology and science when it comes to the whole area of Alzheimer's. That is mind-blowing, and loads more in between. So no matter what age you are, it's one that you're going to enjoy. Shane, you are very welcome to the Are We There Yet podcast studio.
Thank you so much for having me.
You are a geriatrician with the Matter Private. And you know what? I feel that you are the perfect guest for this podcast, because you spend most of your time thinking about where we're all headed. We're all asking the question, are we there yet? But as I said, you're kind of dealing with a lot of people later in life.
Absolutely.
And looking at where we are, you know, and where medicine has taken us to, and allowing us all to live longer and all of those things. But I'm really keen to talk to you about your decision to get into geriatrics and the wider story. But first, set the scene. Tell me a little bit about yourself, where you're from. You said that you weren't the typical medical student, like you didn't go straight from school into medical college.
Yeah, so I grew up on a dairy farm in Kerry. So out mucking in on the farm, helping to clean up all the messy stuff that's involved with that. I was an active child, lots of sports and things like that, but not too academic. And I suppose gradually, bit by bit, I was interested in computers more than medicine, but sort of filtered in towards that direction later on in my teenage years. Always close to my grandmother particularly, and I think that was one of the things that set me on the track towards geriatric medicine. But then when I hit college, I actually decided to take a couple of years out as well, so I didn't go straight through medical school all the way from the start to the end. I'm a big fan of taking a break and taking stock. So medical school is very academic heavy in the first few years, or it used to be at least. So I took 2 years, went off traveling. I was an English teacher for a while, volunteering in various different places across Europe as well. So just to get out of the library for a while and live life a little bit.
And so when you were doing all that and traveling and kind of seeing the world, was that informing the decision in the speciality area that you wanted to progress in?
It probably wasn't, to be honest. I suppose it's part of just life experience in general. And then when I came back, my first placement happened to be in geriatric medicine.
Okay.
And I immediately warmed to it, you know, and I thought of my grandmother and all of the good times we had shared together. And, you know, I suppose I had seen my grandmother getting sick as well, and watching that and knowing that she couldn't be helped. You know, it was, say, back in the 90s when she passed away. She had lung cancer. There was a chest x-ray. That was it. You had the diagnosis and that was it. Nothing else could be done, you know. So things have moved on a lot since then, thankfully. So I suppose I started off then day one as a doctor in geriatric medicine. 2 years later, was assigned back into geriatric medicine. And by then I had made up my mind. I'd seen lots of different specialty areas at that stage, but I loved geriatric medicine.
You loved geriatrics, yeah. Yeah, because it's like when you say geriatric medicine or you say geriatrician, it doesn't have like the same sort of cool vibes as pediatrician.
Totally, yeah. And that's the thing. And when you look at where the words come from, you know, geriatrician means a healer of old people. But it sounds totally different, and you get different looks when you say that to my friends who are pediatricians. You know, that word is lovely and warm and fuzzy. And geriatrician or geriatric still has a bit of an extra sort of load to it. But that's more to do with how we look on aging in society as opposed to something else.
I think so. I mean, I have vivid memories of being in the Coombe, about to give birth to my first child. And the clipboard that was attached to my bed said geriatric mother. I was 39 years of age. Yeah, 39. And I just went, oh, Jesus, what?
And I definitely don't agree with it being used in that situation, you know. And as I say, it means old person. And clearly in your 30s, you're not an old person. So that term shouldn't be applied. So we have to be very careful about how we describe things in medicine. And I think we're definitely often guilty of using terms without really knowing the impact on the person who's receiving it.
I mean, I remember giving out a lot about it at the time and going online, and there was a lot of mothers giving out about it. But then 3 years later, I had my second child, and it was still
There.
still in the clipboard.
Absolutely.
Well, I wasn't going to not be there, I suppose, the longer we go on. But yeah, so I suppose there's a negative connotation, I think, for a lot of people with the word geriatric. So Shane, this is one of the reasons that I wanted to have you on, because you very much believe that healthy aging, we shouldn't start thinking about it in our 40s and 50s when we all start thinking about it. But actually, it goes much further back than that, and even as far back as childhood.
Yeah. Definitely, and even further into the womb, your health when you're developing at the very start of life. But certainly in childhood, I'm my own kids, I've noticed as they've passed through school, you start in preschool, you're going in, you're running around all day, you're burning off energy, you're very active on your feet. You go to primary school, you tend to sit down a lot more. It's not as long during the day as secondary school, but there's a lot of inactivity to do with education, unfortunately. And I suppose that policy has to come from the very top to try and see, can we change that? But for me, increasing the amount of activity is vital, because if you start that early, you're going to keep those habits all the way through life.
Do you think that's the biggest indicator for healthy aging?
Activity levels, yes, completely.
100%.
100%, yeah. Exercise, moving. Even last week, there was a study that shows if you're sedentary and you move an extra 5 minutes a day, it's associated with a 10% drop in your mortality. So it's huge. So you just need to keep moving in whatever form is possible and enjoyable for you.
Yeah, and I remember years ago, Professor Niall Moyna, who is the head of sport at DCU, and him saying this one line that has stuck with me forever. He was like, movement is the closest thing to a magic pill that we have.
Absolutely. Yeah, if you could package that as a pill, more people would take it, actually. Because, we all find it hard, obviously, in busy lifestyles to try and fit that in. And if you look at adulthood, we get up, we tend to jump in a car in the morning, so we're sitting down. A lot of people are working in office, so you're sitting down during the day. You come home, you're tired, you might have a quick dinner, maybe not as healthy as it should be as well. Then you're sitting down to relax because you've had a busy day. So there's a lot of inactivity baked into how we've designed modern life. And for me, I certainly struggled with that all through medical school, trying to get the time to exercise. And I was telling everyone, you should be going out exercising, and then not really doing it myself. And the one thing that changed it for me was only a year ago getting an e-bike, which has got me out of the car and exercising on my way in and out of work every day. So, we say you should have about 150 minutes each week of moderate intensity activity. So that's quite a lot when you think about it, and more than just walking. So it's moderate intensity. So for me, a half an hour commute, 7.5 kilometers in and out of work every day. By Tuesday evening, my phone is pinging me saying you've reached your weekly target of activity.
But what about if you are doing that amount of activity, but you are eating a huge amounts of ultra-processed food, which is what we are doing in the Western world?
For sure. So there's all of these different sort of risk factors, I suppose, in life generally. The more you can avoid the risk factors, the better. So, you can think of it really on one hand. You can think, so thumbs down to smoking. So start with all the fingers, thumbs down to smoking. Your pointer pointed in your mouth. What do you put in your mouth every day? What's your food? So Mediterranean diet is the best one for us. Your tall middle finger is standing up straight, exercise, weight-bearing exercise as well. So keep that on a regular basis. Ring finger, commitment, your relationship with alcohol, particularly here we're talking about, because that's a toxin, a neurotoxin. So keeping that to a minimum or getting rid of it if at all possible. And little finger is just thinking about weight throughout life, which obviously will fluctuate, but it's to try and keep to a healthy weight. If you do those 5 things, you're going to live 10 to 12 years longer on average than people who do them wrong. So it's the simple things, and those are the big things we know improve longevity.
What actually happens to the body as we age?
Yeah, it's really interesting, right? So there are actually still theories of aging as opposed to this is definitely what happens, this is why we age.
Yeah.
But essentially, cells reproduce a certain number of times, and after that, they can't reproduce anymore. Unlike the cancer cells, which are, they can keep going for as long as they want to. Our normal cells have a lifespan. So we replace cells, all the time, every minute, every day. But at some point, that process can't continue. The other thing is there's DNA damage from certain things in life, and that could be, sunlight, too much sunshine exposure, alcohol, smoking, those things. So they damage our DNA. And those are the things that make aging happen faster and earlier. So if you can avoid exposing yourself to those things, you'll certainly do better. And exercise then has been shown to improve the condition of our cells overall. So there's lots you can do. If you look at, say, Alzheimer's disease, we know that about 45-50% of that is actually preventable if we're doing all of the right things.
That always, when I hear that statistic just in the last year, I just go, wow.
Yeah.
I mean, so talk us through that. What are the preventative measures?
Again, it's going back to that life course view of it. So starting early in life, it's actually educational level. So it's good education that's protective for your brain. Activity levels, so all throughout life. In midlife, it's what you call the vascular risk factors. So to try and keep your blood vessels healthy. So that's avoiding cigarettes, keeping alcohol to a minimum, and then medical conditions that might develop like high blood pressure, high cholesterol, high sugar levels, diabetes. So keeping those under control, obviously finding them early and then bringing them down to normal levels. And then interestingly, there's hearing loss. So if you have hearing loss, particularly in midlife, that really increases your risk of dementia later on. And if you look later on in life, so I suppose it's one of the main ways we get signals into the brain. And it's almost like having the radio not quite tuned in, and you have to make more of an effort then. So your cognitive activity, you're burning up more energy, you're focusing more on that, and you're getting less of the message in. So you're understimulating the brain as well. So that's something you can do something about. You can find hearing loss, you can get that checked and discovered and do something about it quite easily.
Which will ultimately then impact the brain and how it works.
Absolutely. And there's mixed things you can do. For example, if you needed a hearing aid, I suppose, as we get older, there are certain things we don't want to think about. Most of us don't want to think about having a hearing aid. We don't want to think about needing a walking stick. So there's lots of things that are associated with aging and again have a kind of a negative connotation. But even more recently, Apple have new buds that have a hearing aid function. So you can pop those in, pop those out. They're much easier than, say, a hearing aid which goes in and it's a bit finicky. So for some people, they use that and that gets them through, their daily contact with people and they don't use it outside of that. So technology is helping us to use, I suppose, more user-friendly ways of trying to deal with these things. And then just to finish off, going back to later life. So there's things there like social stimulation. So loneliness is a huge risk factor for, mortality, actually. So it's really strong effect. And if you're at home
Am I right in saying
alone,
that when you're talking about loneliness, it can be as detrimental as cancer? Right? There's some
absolutely.
link. There's some statistic.
They've equated it to smoking cigarettes, 15 a day, in terms of the kind of magnitude of the risk. But so again, you can do something about that. So we need that social stimulation. We need cognitively stimulating activities. So if you retire and you have a cliff edge retirement, for some people, that's a danger because you've stopped using your brain. And like a muscle, if you stop using it, it will become, less active and less good at processing things. So we need to find something else. If you do think about retiring, maybe part-time work for a while is a better way to go. If you retire full-time, what are you going to do? You need something to stimulate your brain, hobbies, interests, grandkids, whatever it is. But we have to keep busy and active. So there's things you can do all the way through the lifespan. And it's even also air pollution has been discovered to be a risk factor for dementia. And there's some evidence that even noise, like noise of traffic, if you live near roads, might confer an increased risk of dementia.
And in Ireland, what are our ratios? What are our, in terms of statistics compared to other European countries, what are our levels of Alzheimer's and dementia?
Well, so the tricky thing about that is there's a lot of it that is undiscovered. So, we know that probably about a third of people with dementia, and I suppose just worth saying, maybe dementia is an overall term for progressive memory loss. There are different types then. Alzheimer's is one type, vascular dementia, Lewy body dementia. So there's different types, but dementia is the overall name we use for it. So we know that people don't tend to come in and get checked out. And again, the earlier you come, the better, particularly for, say, Alzheimer's dementia, because we now have a treatment that can slow down the progress of it. If you've got vascular dementia, that's about controlling things like blood pressure, blood sugar, all of that. So the earlier it's discovered, the better, So we do want people to try and come in and get the memory checked out. And, we're not scary as geriatricians. There's good evidence now that if you find these things early, you can actually do a lot more goes back to exercise again. Even people that have been shown to have Alzheimer's, the progression rates of Alzheimer's are lower in people who do a lot of exercise.
And can I ask you about genetics and what role that plays? I mean, we've talked about the environments and what what we can do and how the environment can impact with Alzheimer's and dementia. But what role do genetics play?
Yeah, so there is a role. It tends to be more pronounced in people who are younger when they get Alzheimer's, so in 50s or 60s.
Okay.
But it can confer a risk. So generally, even if you have somebody who has Alzheimer's in the family, then you do have a slightly increased risk if you're a first-degree relative. There is a gene called ApoE4, which does show that actually if you have, 2 or 3 copies of that, then 1 or 2 copies, you're more likely to have Alzheimer's. And again, that ties in with the new medication that we have. So we're starting to test that now because it also tells us a bit about your risk for the new medication. So it's not something that has been looked into a lot up to very recent years. So we're still discovering a lot more. And even recently, one of the other genes, ApoE3, has been shown to have more of a significant contribution towards our risk to Alzheimer's than we believed before. And Alzheimer's is probably a lot of different causes put together into what we think of as one disease, but there's many pathways into it. So for most people, the genetic risk isn't something you need to think about or get tested, but I suppose we do look into it sometimes in certain populations.
And, we hear of big breakthrough medicines when it comes to obesity, with the GLP-1s, with cancers. Like, is there a kind of a big silver lining moment in terms of breakthroughs in this area?
Yeah, it's really, the first time right now, as we're speaking, that actually there is something changing in this area of Alzheimer's disease treatment.
You've seen in your whole career?
Yeah, so for the last 20 years, it's been the same treatment the whole time in terms of medications. And just to say, the backbone actually is still support no matter what. So it's not the treatment by itself, it's having support in place and making sure that we also look at lifestyle. But treatment is important. And up to now, we haven't had treatment that has actually slowed down the progression of Alzheimer's. We've just had some tablets that can help some people to feel a bit more focused and maybe improve memory by a very modest amount. We now, as of this month, have a new medication which is arriving into Ireland called lecanemab, which has been used in some other countries for the past couple of years. It's the first line really of this new type of medication that has been shown to slow down the progression of Alzheimer's. So it's not huge in terms of its effect. That's important to say. It's not a cure either.
Okay.
It doesn't turn back the clock, but it does slow progression. And to give a sort of a number, the data suggests it's probably over an 18-month period slows it by about 6 months. And the aim is to try and keep you in the early stages for as long as possible.
Wow.
So it's only useful as well and only indicated for people who are in the very early stages of Alzheimer's. So unfortunately, it means if you have progressed on to moderate or severe Alzheimer's, the medication has been shown not to help in that situation.
Right.
So it goes back to early diagnosis.
And early detection and presenting yourself and going to your doctor, going to your geriatrician. And also being aware as somebody, I mean, I'm in my 40s now, my parents are both still alive, but we are, for a lot of men and women of our age with elderly parents, it's to be aware of what's available as well.
And I suppose that's the thing, particularly with memory, if I have a memory issue, I might not notice it that much myself. So very often it is the children who tend to see these things and worry about them and say, will we not get it checked out? So a lot of people are sort of persuaded by a family member to come in and get it checked out. So, if there's a concern being expressed by somebody in your family or a close friend, it's worth listening to that. And you can always come in and get checked out. And if there's nothing to it, it's reassurance. That's great. And we might, again, just go back over lifestyle advice to ensure that your brain health is as good as possible for as long as possible.
Needing hospital care can be confusing. The first question out of everyone's mouth, where do I go? Well, the most important decision when choosing a hospital is choosing one that you can trust, one that has the latest innovations and world-class expertise. That is why so many choose Mater Private Network. Mater Private is Ireland's largest hospital network with hospitals and clinics in 10 locations around the country. They offer some of Ireland's leading specialists in areas like cardiology, oncology, spine, orthopaedics and more. At Mater Private Network, you can be absolutely sure their medical experts put you and your family's needs at the centre of everything they do. Choose the medical care you can trust. Choose Mater Private Network. To find out more, log on to matterprivate.ie. Well, it's exciting times, but it's very new. But at least we have something in this country. Not everybody's going to be able to access it, but we're definitely on the first step. So that it must feel like amazing. It's an exciting time.
It really is. They describe it as a game changer, and this class of medications is a game changer. But obviously, still a lot of issues that are there as well, and a lot of complexity and the cost. So hopefully, we'll have I suppose better options quite soon.
Can I talk about the menopause, perimenopause, because these are the conversations I'm in at my stage, Shane. And I have heard so many conversations and fears, genuine fears from my own friends as to those first stages of perimenopause or menopause where they feel like they're getting early onset dementia. And it is a genuine fear.
Absolutely.
The brain fog, not being able to remember why you went into a room. And people, genuinely, there's a fear for a lot of women that is this the early signs. Now we know that it is linked, the brain fog is linked to menopause, but can you try and kind of talk to us and alleviate as many fears as you can?
Yeah, absolutely. So, brain fog is absolutely an established part of perimenopause time in life. It's often to do with the estrogen levels fluctuating, and estrogen is a really important factor in how your brain metabolizes energy and how it works. So when your estrogen levels are dropping down, that can lead to a change in literally how your brain is processing the glucose, the energy that it takes in, and sort of being held back. So you're not in fifth gear, you're maybe working in second or third gear at times. And so obviously it's a busy time of life too. Usually, the 40s tends to be that time in life where you're busy career-wise, family-wise, there's a lot going on. So it's probably peak time for your brain in terms of the demand on it. So if you've got a lot of demand and reduced metabolism rate, there's a mismatch there. So brain fog is what's created there. Thankfully for most people, that improves as time goes by. And we know, for example, as you get into your 50s, for many people, that's actually the happiest stage of life. The quality of life really just jumps up when you're in your 50s. So a lot of people have shown that. It's worth thinking about your future brain health, though, at that time. So in midlife generally. So again, it's going back to, there's 14 things you can do to try and reduce your risk of dementia later on in life. So it's I suppose exercise is the top one of those. And then all of the other ones, thinking right now is a time for me where I don't feel 100%. I need to start doing something. And exercise probably will help again, because that's been shown to increase your blood flow. So there's lots of things you can do in terms of looking ahead to the future.
Well, that's one of 14. What are the other 13 quickly?
Yeah, I suppose there are things that we talked about a while ago there. Those sort of lifelong things, but it's, avoiding things like smoking and alcohol. It's having a good education level. It's controlling your vascular risks, your high blood pressure, your high cholesterol, your high blood sugar. Those are the sort of things that you can do in that sort of midlife time to try and make sure that we're adding life to years as opposed to adding years to life later on down the line.
Yeah, and I mean, that's what we all want to live longer, but we want to live with a quality of life.
Absolutely.
Now, I have to talk to you about the longevity, the explosion in longevity medicine. I am knee deep in it at the moment. Peptides and NAD and rapamycin. And I know you're a geriatrician. You are not a Instagram influencer, and you are not a tech bro billionaire. Not that you're going to admit on this podcast anyway. But where is your head at when it comes to that? Because it seems that the world is excited about all of this new, these new peptides, this new medication that is claiming to slow the aging process.
Yeah. And, wouldn't it be great if we could slow down the aging process, just like we can now slow down Alzheimer's? So I would be hopeful that in future we have some medications that will be shown to be useful. But as it stands, the evidence base is really very poor for all of those things that you've mentioned in humans. We know, for example, that in animals, in earthworms, lots of different species out there, you can have a big impact on longevity using certain medications. But it's difficult to do those studies in humans, so that's a tricky thing. But as it stands, we can't recommend any of those things, so I don't take rapamycin, I don't take peptides, and I wouldn't advise anyone to take them until
But
we
are
have.
you and all the geriatricians reading up about this going, oh
Yeah.
my God, did you see the latest?
Yeah.
And did you see what Brian Johnson is injecting into himself? And
Yeah.
I mean, just last week I was down in Wexford with a fella, and peptides, 40 different peptides people are injecting into themselves, all like COBT, I can't even remember them now, but I mean, all claiming to stop the cells separating, which is what aging really is.
Yeah.
In
Absolutely.
in layman's terms.
The DNA damage,
and these
we
people,
know.
like, they all believe in 40 years' time we will be living to 140.
Yeah. I mean, if you look back in the 1800s in London, your lifespan was 30.
Yep.
By the 1900s, it was 40. By 2000, it was 80. So a massive increase in the last 100 to 200 years. And we probably have more to squeeze out of humanity as in terms of lifespan. But I suppose we don't know yet what's the right way to do that in terms of those experimental treatments. We do know that all of the healthy, modifiable behaviors that we have can definitely improve your lifespan and your health span. So there's lots of things with very good evidence based out there. And again, it's back to exercise, particularly as the number one thing. Really good evidence that will make you live longer.
But it's almost like they're bored of this, Shane. That's what I get, right?
Yeah.
I get like that it's now looking for the next thing, like hyperbaric chambers, sauna heat. We're looking for, as opposed to just concentrating on what we know works.
Yeah. So I think you can do both, and, as humans, we've looked to the moon and said we want to go there, so we always do these sort of moonshot things. But it's good to do that, but we don't yet know at this stage what's working. And there's some promising, I suppose, compounds out there. But as it stands, I couldn't recommend any of them. It's nice to see, and I think it'd be great to continue that research, and probably something will work.
Like, you went to the Longevity Summit in Trinity, the same one that I went to, and there was very eminent scientists from all over the world there.
Yeah.
And it's quite convincing when you're sitting in the room with them all about these new drugs that claim to stop us getting older.
Yeah, it's nice to hear, isn't it? And it would be a lovely idea that every morning you get up and you pop a pill and it's going to add a decade to your life every day that you have it. So we would love to have that, I'm sure. But at the same time, again, going back to quality of life, there's no point in just increasing your lifespan if it doesn't also increase your health span. So if we're living to 120, but we're spending 20 years in poor health and maybe, poor mobility, that's going to have a huge impact on things. So we have to be careful that we don't get exactly what we wish for. We have to do it right.
What do you think about the stigma of women aging in society?
It's a huge issue, isn't it? And I think women, unfortunately, have the burden on that. You have always men, particularly in showbiz. Oh, they look great, Sean Connery and people like that, look even better as they get older. Everyone says that. And we've heard from lots of people in the film world who are women in their even 50s and 60s who've said they just don't get the roles, they don't get publicity. So it's an issue with how we perceive aging, and it's an issue that particularly, unfortunately, affects women. And I think that's changing bit by bit, but we have a long way to go with that. Of course, part of being a human is we're a bit vain. We want to look good. And, of course, if you have Botox injections or dye your hair or something like that, then, that's perfectly understandable. But I think the overall issue is that as a society, we have a negative view of aging, and we need to change that. It was Agatha Christie back in the day who said, I married an archaeologist because I knew he would get more and more interested in me as I got older. And,
I love that.
It's a good way of thinking about it, actually. So it is about perception. So some people, will look at you different as you age. So as geriatricians, we look at you the same. We look at the person, we don't look at the age. And that's really important.
And just going back to the conversation at the beginning, and you mentioned your grandmother. I mean, I can't do a podcast about aging and not mention my grandmothers. I mean, the biggest influences in my life, bar none.
Yeah.
Both of them, my maternal and paternal grandparents, they were incredible. And when I think about their lined, beautifully lived in faces full of intellect and full of story and full of just engagement in the world and
a life well lived.
Yeah, and a life well lived. And now I try and I walk around Dublin and you just everybody just looks the same in this kind of wind tunnel with the Botox and I get my Botox. I wish I didn't, but we're living in that world. Like, I feel I've traveled like you have, and in other countries we respect our elders. Absolutely. We look to them for insight, and I just feel that part of society, we're missing it.
Yeah, I think we've gone a bit wrong in terms of how we deal with aging. But Lewis Wolpert, who's a biologist, said that there are 4 stages in life. There's childhood, there is middle age, there is maturity, and there's you're looking very well, which is like, okay, you're 90, you look old, but they don't know what to say. So they say, oh, you're looking very well. And I suppose that is part of getting older is, people do have the scars of aging, and we're getting less of that actually as time goes by. So we're living longer lives, but healthier lives as well. So we're actually slowing down aging by doing all of the right things. And part of that is also in your appearance. We know from twin studies, for example, that a twin who smokes looks much older than a twin who doesn't smoke. So there are certain things, going back again to DNA damage, sun exposure as well, that damage our skin and give us an older appearance. So we should also think about those things, not only the Botox, but making sure we don't get to a point where we might need it, if possible.
And if you were to give us one piece of advice when it comes to aging, regardless of age, what would it be?
It has to be exercise still. And you see, exercise can be started at any age. It's never too late. So, I have some people who are in their 80s and 90s that will have a pedal exerciser, which is just some pedals that you have on the floor in front of you. If you're sitting a lot of the day, you can still just pedal away and you're sort of improving the circulation, you're getting your heart pumping, you're improving your brain circulation. So that is what you need if your mobility is poor. There are people who are in their 90s going out running 5Ks every day. And there are people who are younger, obviously, that can't do that. So you have to match the exercise to the person, to the individual, and not to the age, just to the individual. So each one of us can do something in terms of increasing our exercise level. So, and it's the start of the year, it's a good time to think about it, but the key thing is keeping that going all through life.
I have to ask you about ChatGPT and AI when it comes to brain, right? Because we are all concerned. Students are not using their brain. If we're not thinking, it's not building resilience. As a geriatrician, and we're only at the start of AI, are you worried about our brains?
Yeah, I am. And I suppose it even goes back further. I saw a letter in the paper recently, and it was from a primary school teacher expressing concern about people in primary school not having the skills like social skills and problem solving and imagination skills. And maybe it's to do with screens and interactions. And obviously in teenage years, it's been shown to have some harm, social media. And you take that all the way through life, just generally our engagement with people is less. And things like AI do help to cut corners and reduce our workload. But we have to be cautious about what things we hand over to AI. Because obviously part of the human sort of condition as well is writing and art. And, all of that I think should remain as something that's a form of human expression. And as we go through life, things that are maybe not that interesting, we can give to AI, but things that keep our brain sort of the juices flowing, we should hold on to those things. And we should respect people who use the old ways, still get pen and paper out, because even that's been shown to be better than learning things digitally on a screen. Uses more of your brain when you actually write as opposed to when you type on a keyboard. So there's lots of evolving evidence in that area. On the other hand, AI is a good source of medical information in some areas, and I suppose depending on the AI itself. But a lot of people will come into clinic now having already gone on to AI and asked questions, about Alzheimer's, about lecanemab, about something, and they come in quite well informed.
It is great for giving patients more autonomy.
It is, absolutely. And that's something to be encouraged and supported. Just you always have to be careful about the quality because you still have that sort of hallucination, as they call it, where sometimes it tells you what you want to hear. So I think it's with us forever, and it's got pros and cons. So we just have to make sure we keep an eye on it.
Sudoku and Wordle for you?
Absolutely brilliant. Yeah. Anything that keeps the brain going, and that could be just going out and meeting people. Another study's has shown that the more neighbors you say hello to every day, the better your quality of life. So, just getting out and chatting to people and having that mingling, that social contact is huge as well.
So I'm adding years to my life just by the early
100%.
mornings might be killing me, but chatting to everybody every morning, it's doing me a huge amount of benefit.
I think it is.
So lovely to have you in the studio this morning. Thanks a million, Shane.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Kathryn. Thanks a million.
Needing hospital care can be confusing. The first question out of everyone's mouth, where do I go? Well, the most important decision when choosing a hospital is choosing one that you can trust, one that has the latest innovations and world-class expertise. That is why so many choose Mater Private Network. Mater Private is Ireland's largest hospital network with hospitals and clinics in 10 locations around the country. They offer some of Ireland's leading specialists in areas like cardiology, oncology, spine, orthopedics and more. At Mater Private Network, you can be absolutely sure their medical experts put you and your family's needs at the centre of everything they do. Choose the medical care you can trust. Choose Mater Private Network. To find out more, log on to matterprivate.ie. You've been listening to Are We There Yet? Hosted by me, Kathryn Thomas. Visual design and video edit by Stephen King O'Farrell and Connor Daly. Music courtesy of Audio Network. Series producer Paul McGregor and executive producer Sasha Hamrogue. New episodes of Are We There Yet? Are released every Tuesday morning wherever you get your podcasts. And you can also watch this episode along on YouTube. Are We There Yet? With Kathryn Thomas is an Onic original.